Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Prentiss Rhodes, and we are here with another episode of NASM YouTube. And I have a couple of special guests with me, and have Wendy Batts, NASM Master Instructor, and then I have Shelley Dawson. I hope I got that correct. AFAA, an AFAA Master Instructor. And today we are going to talk about how you're going to manage yourself, your personal growth during these uncertain times. And so let's start with introductions again. I'm going to ask you to talk about yourselves every time you're on with me for those listeners who haven't had the privilege of meeting you. So let's start, since I haven't spoken to you yet, Shelley. Let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, to start out, I am a mom of 5, but also a used to be full-time working mom outside of the home, doing group fitness, yoga teacher trainings, along with my AFAA Master Instructor job, but have recently just switched gears to now homeschooling, adding that to my repertoire. I am here in Utah trying to survive day to day.
Sure. And Wendy, tell us about yourself again.
Yes, my name is Wendy Batts. I am a regional master instructor for NASM. I also teach full-time at California University of Pennsylvania. So I teach in the exercise science department. I am a mother of 1. He's a 4-year-old, and I don't know how Shelley can handle as many as she has, because 1 is quite a handful for me. And yeah, same thing. I see, clients. I do personal training as well, so having to adapt to the newfound online training and teleconferencing and texting and stuff. So yeah, that's me.
All right. Excellent. So let's go ahead and get started. And for those of you who are listening, we were expecting Ken Miller today to join us, but he is having some technical difficulties. He can watch the broadcast later and see that I just threw him under the bus. But we'll go ahead and get going. And the first thing that I want to talk about during this time, we all are under extraordinary circumstances. We've had our lives turned upside down. A lot of us have shifted from working to working and homeschooling and pet care, 24-hour pet care, whatever you have going on. So time management has become a much bigger factor, at least for me it has. Once my routine got turned upside down, I had to rethink how I manage my time. And so just so that we're all on the same page, we really want to understand in this time how we organize ourselves between all of the other extra activities we have going on. So we want to talk a little bit about organization, what you're doing actually to plan, and how you prioritize. So very high level, Shelley, let's start with you since you're new, and I think it's been a year since I talked to you last. How are you focusing on each of those points, organization, planning, and how do you prioritize?
I feel like the first couple weeks that we were in quarantine, I was actually not very organized or structured, feeling like it was a really short amount of time and that it would be easier to kind of be flexible and go with the flow. And then as soon as we got word that our schools were not going to be going back into session until at least May 1st, that kind of changed things for me, especially with my kids, because I felt like during those 2 weeks, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of unstructured time. And I had to decide, okay, what is going to come first, which was obviously my children and their education, and creating a block of time that was maybe not even the normal time that school would be, but it was something that as I was looking through my schedule and still dealing with private clients, that I could be really consistent for my kids between 1 and 3. And for me, I am old school and I still need to write things down on a big calendar. everybody. That's kind of like a central place for everyone to see. So it's just getting school really structured of this is the time that we are going to really focus on this, and then kind of letting everything else align within that was really important. I found that if I will still get up early, I usually teach a 6 a.m. class 2 or 3 times a week. That has been really important for me on an emotional level to find structure of things that still feel normal into that old normal. So still getting up early, maybe I'm not teaching a class, but it's getting my own workout in. And just finding a few things every day that I connect with that really, amidst the chaos, help me feel happy. And connecting with those things, some of that is meditation for myself. It's my favorite chai tea. And it's giving myself a little alone time has really helped my structure and organization to fit those things in.
That is outstanding, and you brought up several actually really good points, and it's good. It feels like we're all on the same wavelength. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that you brought up a little bit later. So, Professor, what are you doing? How are you staying organized? What are you doing to plan, and how do you prioritize between all of your responsibilities?
Well, I'm old school as well. And so I print out a calendar every month. Actually, I print out the entire year, and I literally write everything down. So therefore, there's no doubt that, in case a Google Calendar doesn't sync or something like that, my husband knows what my plans are. I know what his plans are, and then we can adjust accordingly. Again, my priority obviously is my family first. And, even though my son is 4, he still has little exercises and activities that his little preschool has sent for us to do each and every day. So we, I'll get up early because, again, as a professor and being online, I can actually go in and set specific time blocks to check in on my classes, to answer questions, and to make sure that the class is running the way that it's supposed to run. So if I get up at, 5 or 6, so I get up super early, my son doesn't wake up until 7. So I'm blessed because he loves to sleep. So at least I have those 2 hours without, having to be the mom, so I can fulfill, my obligations, and then I can check in again when he takes a nap, and then again at night. So therefore, I'm really just trying to organize myself on, all right, what has to get done today, and then know that in the times that I have nothing planned, it's literally being the mom that needs to run around or go for a walk with my kid or play outside. So, priority, I think right now is going to be family first for most. And then literally thinking, okay, and I know we're going to talk about this coming up, but, what do I need to do to kind of think ahead of when this does get lifted? What can I do for my business? What can I do for my clients now? And then plan accordingly.
Okay, that's outstanding. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into time management. And with all of the stress that's happening, and some of it's good, some of it can be challenging. The first thing that sets the tone is a proper mindset. So what are some things that you tell yourself that lets you know that you can get through everything that you have to do? Wendy? I
think there's really 2 things. I think, again, in the time that I look at when I have my own downtime and my free time, I look at, that we've got to try to take this negative situation and make it positive. I know we talked a lot about that on another podcast that we did, but, we've got to try to find some positivity. And mine is doing self-reflection, really thinking a lot about my family, and then, looking at the daily gratitude list that I have. I mean, my family's healthy, my friends are healthy, and I know that unfortunately there are others that are losing people daily due to the virus and other unfortunate diseases and illnesses that are out there. So I think it's really just blocking time to kind of, count my blessings and then prioritize the other stuff second, make it second.
Okay, and Shelley, what are you doing? What are some things that you tell yourself to help you manage your stress, to let you know you can get through it all?
I feel like being present has been a very powerful tool for me. trying to not think about the what ifs, or maybe reflecting even on the past and how life was just a few weeks ago, but just taking in the moment of, you know what, this is how it is right now, and even allowing and acknowledging every feeling that comes up. Because I don't know about you guys, but it has really been a roller coaster. And there's times that I've felt a little depressed. There's other times that I felt super positive. There's times that I felt bored, which is a really weird thing for me. I don't really feel bored often, but it's allowing all of those emotions to be there when they are and just acknowledging it and saying, hey, right this second, I feel frustrated, or right this minute, I am extremely happy. And that's also been a good mindset for me to create space for other people to express that as well, which I think is really important, that everyone gets to honor how they feel in that moment, and it's not being depressed or put aside, because I think that will come back a little later. Maybe when things are back to normal, people suppress those feelings. There could be some emotional damage that's being done if we don't allow for that conversation and communication to happen.
And that is really good. We're going to circle back to you, but we lost your signal a little bit. But you brought up a really good point about acceptance. And I think we are in an industry, we are cut from the same cloth in that we want to problem solve. We want to carry a lot of weight on our shoulders, and sometimes it's just not possible. You know, we have to accept where we are. Where we are, we have to accept what we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think kind of where Prentiss was going was, the fact that, Shelley did cut out for a couple minutes. And I think what he was saying is the importance of the acceptance factor, that, you can't get anything and everything to change. We're just trying to make. Oh, there you are. We're trying to adapt. So I was trying to fill your shoes, Prentiss, and I'm not very good at it. So, so we're super glad you're back, dude.
The perfect example of acceptance right here. When that happens, you just have to
go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have Skype telling me that it looks like I'm back, and I am back. And that's just one of those things we're going to have to navigate, because I think the entire world, at least 5 billion of us, are all using the internet right now at this very minute. So once in a while we drop a signal. So I am lucky to be on with two great professionals who can just pick right up and keep the train moving. So I don't know where we left off exactly, but now with the things that we can change or things that we can do, what are some things that you've had to, what are some problem solving strategies that you've come up with to navigate some of the things that we've been going through? Shelley.
I feel like I have quite a bit more downtime than what I'm normally used to. And so I created a list of things I've always wanted to do when I never had the time to do it. And when I notice that those free moments are popping up, I just refer to that as to like, oh, okay, this is really something that I've wanted to dive into or learn about. I feel like it's also been a great place to be a student the last little while, especially as I'm used to being on the teaching side of things. It's been nice to be able to learn from a lot of other instructors where content is so readily available online. So that's also been something that I've been doing, is taking an opportunity to be a student.
Okay, and Wendy, what are you doing for some of your problem-solving strategies?
I want to say it's kind of the same. I mean, not to piggyback off of exactly what Shelley said, but I mean, it's more of really just, thinking about what are the things that I haven't been able to get to, making lists and then prioritizing it, which is kind of what we mentioned before. So, my list that I do around the house is more honeydew lists. So I'm sure my husband is loving the fact that, that he's at home right now because I've made quite a list for him. But, but for myself, it is trying to really knock out, take some time to knock out some continuing education units and to look into some of the different organizations and kind of different areas that, I wasn't that comfortable in. Like I just finished my NASM CNC and that was incredible. I thought I knew some stuff about nutrition, but I think that certification alone opened my eyes to see things in a different level and a more deeper level. And then now I'm in the process of taking the CES again. I mean, obviously I've been certified since the day that came out, but, with the new content and the next, technology aspect, I'm really trying to take advantage of that on any downtime I have. So I think it's trying to better myself again, because the more that I can do now to gain the knowledge that I can at home, when I am able to go out and be with my clients and be with my, my colleagues, I'll feel more confident, I think, in some of my new applications that I may be picking up now through the continuing education.
Right, great. So now let's talk a little bit about goal setting, because one thing that we all have to accept is that we can do some things, we can't do everything. Usually when I try to plan goals, it's very much like our strength training. And Wendy and I talked about this today. So we start out with a macro cycle. What are we going to do for the next month or 3 months that we want to accomplish? And how do we break that down into more digestible pieces, which brings us to the meso cycle? What are we doing in the month or in the week? And then right down to our day-to-day tasks. So what do you do? And let's start with you, Shelley. What do you do, or how do you use your calendar? And I'll talk to you about this as well, Wendy. How do you plan that out over the next several months?
I always like to set the end goal first of what that bigger picture is going to look like, and just how you were talking about, I will scale it back. So thinking, what do I need to have accomplished in the next 2 weeks if I'm going to finish this goal next month, and breaking it down by week, and then having a daily to-do list of things that I can work on towards that. So I do have a checklist of things that I'm continually adding to, and it's just bringing myself back to looking at it frequently as to, oh yeah, this was what I was working on. And perhaps even just, there is something about checking it off the list of these little tiny things that help me to feel successful, especially if the end goal feels a little overwhelming. Having those smaller goals brings a small amount of success. And I think that's helpful when the end goal is a little bit bigger.
Okay, excellent. So, Wendy, how are you managing this? What are some of the strategies you have to set your goals?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I really want to try to set my end goal first. I mean, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And then, of course, we've learned this with NASM, and you've heard this 1,000 times about the SMART goals. Like, you want it to be specific, you want it to be measurable, and then kind of go through the entire acronym. But at the same time, you also want to think, is it something that's doable? Is it something that, can you be flexible? So if you set like a timeline, is it so strict that you can't have one mess up? Because as we know, our days are changing, minute by minute almost. And so, we can't guarantee that we can fulfill that, even though that's what we're hoping to do. So I think, you want to make them challenging, but then you also want to be able to, try to think of some innovative things as well. I think a lot of times, when we think about SMART goals, we kind of think of it more on a fitness level, but I think we want to think of it too when it comes to business, when it comes to family, and try to make it, kind of broaden our perspective on the way that we look at things, and then think of yourself, like, how can I put myself in this situation, and then make a goal out of it. And then at that point, again, once you have your end goal, you have to think, okay, how much time do I think it's going to take? And then from there, you would take, work it out month to month and then week by week and then, down to the specific day to day. So I have to write everything down these days, because if I don't write it down and it's not on my list, then I don't do it. So for me, having that checklist every single day and checking it off before I go to bed, it actually is a huge win for me. So it builds my confidence to know that I can achieve something and that I'm working myself up to the end goal, whatever that might be.
Awesome. That is
Can
really
I throw
good.
something else in there?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was just thinking, I feel like in our industry, we're very self-motivated, and that end goal is very motivating for me. But as I've been working with my kids, they're not so motivated by the end goal of, yay, I get to have my homework done for the next 2 weeks. So I've noticed with them that reward-based has really paid off. They have a list of things that they want to do or play or whatever their rewards are for them. So then we create these smaller tasks of, we need to get through science and math, and then you guys get a 10-minute break outside to do whatever you want. And that's been really helpful within that, and for myself. If there's those mundane things that aren't necessarily a big goal, but just smaller things that I need to do every day, I will tell myself, okay, let's get 3 of those things done, and then you can read the book that you want or watch that Netflix show. It's just like a smaller reward base has been helpful.
That is great. And wow, we're really syncing up, Shelley, because you just segued me into the next point. So we have, as I was doing some reading for this podcast or webinar, I don't know what it is exactly, but I was looking at a grid, and it was a grid, 4 squares: essential, and urgent and non-urgent, and non-essential, urgent, and also non-urgent. So for me, one of the essential things is prepping and being prepared for webinars like this. And that's urgent because we have to provide information to everyone out there listening to us. And something for me that's non-essential, urgent, is that constant stream of emails that I get every day, or the phone call of someone wanting me to answer a question. And while that can be very helpful, it does pull me off task sometimes for the essential and urgent stuff. And how are some of those things, or what are some of the things that are essential for you, and how do you differentiate those 4 quadrants? And what are some of the things that, or how do you prevent yourselves from getting pulled off task? There's a lot to unravel there. Let's start with you, Wendy.
You know what? I think having a calendar, and looking at the timeframes, because again, with me working for CalU, I mean, I obviously have a lot of essential, urgent matters, because again, if grades are due at a certain time, or I have specific meetings when it comes to, university-wide meetings or even departmental meetings, those are something that I obviously have to be prepared for, just like what we're doing right now. I think, what my big problem and what I have struggled with is the essential but not urgent. So, for example, if someone sends me an email and it's 11 o'clock at night, I feel like I need to get on my phone and answer that right away. Because, again, I don't want to leave someone hanging, because obviously that could be urgent to them. Even though it is important, it's not something that I should drop what I'm doing to just go answer that email. So I think the biggest challenge that I have had, and the one thing that has helped me with those type of situations, is doing the different blocks throughout the day. So getting up early in the morning, spending 2 hours, going through emails and, answering questions, and then doing what I need to do. And then doing the same thing for like a block of time, at lunch, and then again, a block of time in the evening, and then cut it off. Because again, I will be on my phone 24/7 or trying to kind of please everyone. I've noticed I'm definitely a people pleaser, and I need to really kind of take 20 steps back and realize that, while it is important, and I'm not saying what they're asking me or what they're sending me isn't important, I also need to think of my own quality of life. And I think I'm actually getting a lot more done. I'm definitely more productive. in those specific time frames, because it won't be like, oh, I'll just get to that in a few minutes, and then I forget about it, and then I'm stressing out, and then I go back and forth. And so then I feel like I can't really prioritize or focus during the other times of the day on things that I had set aside to do, educational stuff, exercise, or family time.
Okay. Now, Shelley, and you actually segued me, Wendy, so we're all on the same wavelength. That's excellent. But before we get to the next point, Shelley, what are you doing? How do you handle those distractions, those non-urgent or not non-essential but urgent things that constantly pop up, especially you with 5 kids?
Yeah, I think having boundaries for me is really important, and also acknowledging what might be important to someone else isn't necessarily important to me. And I can do that with specific groups of people, but when my 5-year-old is having some emergency that's a huge deal to her about a Barbie dress that she can't get on, and it's complete trauma and meltdown for her, I feel like that's an important time for me to be distracted for a few minutes. So I think it depends on who's trying to distract you. But also, I think that like having that cutoff time of I like to call it first things. I think about during my day, what are the things that need to happen first? Like what's coming up for me today that needs to get done, and really taking that into priority. And then also just being flexible. I find that having a really good balance of structure and flexibility works best for me. And having an understanding that there are going to be distractions throughout the day, especially with little kids that are here all of the time, that it just, for my mental sake and for theirs, it's easier if I can be a little flexible within my structure.
Okay, excellent. So you both brought up the point of what I call, or what is called, chunking. So can you explain, and usually for me, it's like put all of the similar tasks together, take all of the low-hanging fruit, knock it out, get it done, so that I can move on to other tasks. So what are some examples of how you chunk your activities down into similar or more digestible steps? Let's go, Shelley.
So I will definitely separate my work jobs. I have a few different places, like my regular home gym right now that I'm used to working at full time. We're transitioning to online, so I just create a chunk of time that's either before my kids are awake or after they go to bed, or plan it into the day so that other people are aware that it's part of the schedule. Like, hey, mom is leaving from 9 to 11 to go and work on this specific thing. And when they have an awareness of what I'm doing, and I have that awareness, and the day is more structured, and everybody can be on the same page, I feel like that is helpful. And also giving myself a time frame of, hey, I'm locking myself in my room for 45 minutes so I can work on writing this article. If you guys need anything that's an emergency, knock 3 times, say the code word, I'll come out. If not, we're going to go with this 45 minutes. You guys have something else to do. And really just giving them a clear outline. I feel like when they have an understanding of, hey, 45 minutes, then everything can open back up for a while. That's been really helpful structure-wise within our house.
Okay, perfect. And Wendy, what are some of the things that you're doing currently to chunk your time, get rid of the, put your tasks together, knock out the low-hanging fruit?
I think it's pretty similar, because again, I have to think about my little guy's schedule, and because again, he doesn't really have one, so I'm the one that has to make sure that I am fully focused on him, just obviously to keep him safe and to get the stuff done that we need to do. And then also to keep him active, because obviously the more active he is, the more tired he's going to be later. So we go to bed a lot easier. So that's obviously super important. But I think, if you're not careful and you really don't plan ahead and you don't think about this whole chunking factor, then you can end up getting yourself in a heap of trouble and then obviously lose the entire day. And what I mean by that is, like, I get up in the morning, again, I focus on work, and I do that before everyone gets up. And then after that, then if I want to get on social media, I'm making myself say, okay, you know what, I'm going to spend a total of 30 minutes on social media, which sounds like a lot of time, but when you're at home all day, it's easy to get on Facebook. Like, hey, did someone like my post? You know, today's my husband's birthday, and I'm like, hey, dude, did you see this person replied to you? So, you know, I want to try to stay away from that. So I think, you know, scheduling times to do the fun things, I think is important too, but also realizing that, you know what, some of this stuff can wait. You know, so I think really prioritizing what needs to happen. So again, it's work, it's my family, it's my kids' education, it's outside playtime, it's you know, doing things for me like walking the dog, spending, you know, working on time for dinner, whatever the case may be. So I really think just, you know, having little, you know, section and as schedule. For instance, you know, I'm going to hopefully work on videos soon. So starting, you know, on Monday, I'm blocking time away when I can do that. But I also have to work around my kids' naps. So, you know, or do it late at night. So that stuff's important because that way I have a schedule of, okay, this is what I want to get done today. But that goes back to, I feel like it's a huge accomplishment for me when I can check those things off. So.
That is great, and don't worry about your little guy being in the videos. I want him in those videos. I need him in those videos. So it can be
careful what you wish for.
It can be a mom and son workout. That is good, and both of you brought up a good point about having that cutoff time. Now, Wendy, you probably have a little more access to the research, but your brain has a bandwidth just like our Wi-Fi. And after a certain point, you start to become unproductive. And it actually takes a little bit longer time to accomplish things than if you just focused. So when I like to plan things, I have a 3-to-1 principle. So I do something hard for 45 minutes, whether that's reading, writing, or doing whatever that is. And I give myself a 15-minute break. And usually at the end of the day, what I've learned to do for myself is to have a hard cutoff where I shouldn't do anymore and save the rest of it for tomorrow. So let me ask, how do you plan specifically your cutoff time, like intraday and at the end of the day? Shelley.
I feel like the cutoff in the morning, I have more control over that. As to if the kids are not awake yet, I can really get up and get a lot of things accomplished, or actually just take some time for myself to get the day started in a way that feels productive and also puts me in a really good mindset, whether that's a little breath exercise or a little bit of yoga or meditation. Throughout the day, it's a little bit tricky for me because even when I feel like maybe I could really use some downtime, I don't necessarily get that choice as often because there's a lot of other people that need my attention. So I like to tap out when my husband comes home and be like, your turn. So incorporating, right. If you have a little bit of help and somebody else can take over for a little while, that is really beneficial for me. I know he's working all day, but at the same time, what's happening, so not saying he's not out there working, but if he can take the kids and be in charge of the household for even 20 minutes for me to kind of breath and reset, that really helps for the evening to go well. And then both of us, I think, as in a relationship, really honoring the time together at night and letting our kids know that there's like a cutoff time of like, guys, good night, and so that we can have more, I would say like talking to an adult is really important, or having that support, whether it's through community or whether it's with a spouse, but finding that interaction outside of maybe what's happening right inside of your home all of the time has been really important.
Excellent. And so here's a question. Let's answer this question right now, actually. And the question is, are any of you using some of the time right now to continue your fitness education? And if so, how are you fitting that in? And I don't know who this person is, but we are all on the same wavelength today. I think this has never happened. And that actually leads us into the next point. And that's the concept of self-investment. What are we doing right now? How are we putting money, so to speak, in our bank so that it can pay some dividends later? And whether that's, and I have down here 4 quadrants that we can focus on, and that's professional, physical, of course, we don't want to let our health go by the wayside. Emotional, and I'll explain that a little bit later, and the concept of connectedness. So we'll talk about each of those points. But when we talk about self-investment, and I had this conversation with you earlier today, Wendy, and it's about my rule of 2. So for those of you who are Star Wars nerds like I am, you know what the rule of 2 is. So there can only be one master at one time. There's one master, and then there's one apprentice. And the way this works for self-investment is that you have one big thing that you can do. And I know, Wendy, you mentioned that you were studying CNC. That's a big course to go through, a certified nutrition coach course. And so I doubt that you're doing, in the midst of all of your other responsibilities, I doubt there are other things that you will be able to put on your plate to stay sane. So number one, to answer this viewer's question, what are you doing right now to work on yourselves professionally, and how do you use my rule of 2? Actually, George Lucas's rule of 2, but I stole it for the purposes of this webinar. Go ahead, Wendy.
I think the question is a great question, because again, you have to invest in yourself. So you have to really be able to think, what is it that's going to make me a better professional? So I think, I would start as the student and think of where are the areas that I don't feel that I am a master in. And number one for me, it was nutrition. That is definitely not my strong point. And that's why I felt right when it came out that the CNC would be a credential that I would really want to have, because again, I do talk about nutrition on a very, very simple and very shallow point with my clients. And, I felt like I wanted that knowledge just in case, somebody wanted to go a little deeper. I wanted to know my scope of practice. I wanted to know what I could and couldn't say. And then I wanted to be able to blend that into, some of the training aspects that I do. Like, I feel like I am very, very, I'm a very good trainer. I feel very confident in the programs that I design. And I feel that I've got that respect from my clients, which I think is important. But again, I think what's important is to really think about where are the areas that you're falling short, and then take this time right now to get as much information as you possibly can. I think once you do that, again, it's finding the time and scheduling out the time. And so for me, what I did, I just completed the CNC, so yay for me. But now I've moved on to the CES again, because I want to make sure that I have the most up-to-date information, because that's important to me. And I do use the CES with all of my clients. That is a big portion of what we do, kind of as our activation and pre-warm up, no matter what phase they're in. So I think it's really just, for me, I wanted to try to get through 2 to 3 chapters every single day. And that was something that was my goal, my short-term goal, in order to complete it at a certain time. And so, I've fallen short a couple of times and only have gotten through 2 chapters. And then there's been, one day where my son slept in really late. I had gotten up that morning, my grades were done, everything was good with the university. And I actually had time to sit down and start really diving deep into the content. So I think it's really just thinking about where you want to be, and then, where are you kind of lacking in the area of expertise, and then putting it in your schedule, and then trying to make sure that you abide by your calendar and your schedule the best way that you can.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. To investing in yourself it just takes a small amount of time. Now that's a pretty big goal for reading nutrition and some of the biochemistry that goes into that class. But if you just take the time to schedule 1 or 2 chapters a day, or even 1 chapter a day, or you dedicate 30 minutes to reading or listening to audio, whatever it is you have to do in that course, I think that takes you a long way. And it removes the stress of that overwhelm that we feel, having to feel like we got to get it all done at one time. And now let's go to you, Shelley. So what are some of the things that you do to follow my rule of 2? How do you pick the most important thing? And how do you pick the most important thing, and what do you do to reduce the overwhelm to get your stuff done?
I really like what Wendy said. I agree with all of that. The other thing, along with places that I feel maybe I'm not super strong, is also finding something that I've been really interested in but haven't had an opportunity to dive into. I'm finding that with this extra time, if there is something that I have an interest in, I'm much more likely to want to study about it, read about it. And then I also try to give myself an opportunity to teach it to someone else. So whether I'm going to incorporate that into my next workout with a client, or maybe I'm going to add it into my meditation. And I always try to schedule it before I've actually really learned about it. So then I have a deadline to learn it as well, which I don't know if that helps with the overwhelming, but if I feel committed or that I have someone to be accountable to, then my interest level in learning it definitely steps up its game.
Okay, outstanding. And so now let's dive in before we go on, and before we talk about the remaining 3 quadrants of our 4-quadrant model here. I just want to stress to everyone listening that one of our master instructors, Rick Ritchie, says a little bit of something is worth more than a whole lot of nothing. So if you overwhelm yourself, if you stress out about trying to complete this Herculean task and you never take any steps to dive in there, you obviously won't complete the task. So break it down, break that task down, your learning down into very small chunks. 15 minutes of reading a day. If that's all you can commit to it and you can do it stress-free, then your body's giving you some valid feedback there. You should take that. Read for 15 minutes. And if you continue to do that, by the time a few weeks passes, you will have completed a lot of that course. So let's dive into the remaining 3 quadrants here. So how do you fit, and this question is for both of you, just chime in. How do you keep yourself in shape during this time?
I guess I can go first. So I have a tracker, and I wear it every day. It measures my sleep, it measures my daily activity, measures my heart rate. It kind of keeps me in the know of where I am throughout the day. And so, it's kind of nice if you meet the goal of how much sleep you were supposed to get, and then you woke up and realize that you really did sleep as much as you thought you did, or you met that goal. So really trying to think not just on a physical standpoint, but rest and recovery, and then being active throughout the day. So some of the stuff that I do, again, I have a 4-year-old, so we're outside all the time, when we're done with some of the inside tasks that we have to do. So, it's the accidental exercise that we've discussed in the past. So, playing with him or taking the dogs for more like 1 or 2 walks a day. And then, going into my basement, I have a little gym set up and doing some core and activation work because I've, maybe been in a seated position or something like that. So I think it's really just, hopping on a spin bike and just spinning for 30 minutes, blaring the music that I want to hear, like little things, because again, I need that mentally in order to make myself a better person to my family. And, I think, any little thing I do right now is a win, but I am definitely more active since this has started, even though I've been home more, because I've really been more involved in doing some of the stuff to keep my kid active as well. So.
Okay, so Shelley, what are you doing? I know you have five kids, so that's like a workout within itself. But what specifically are you doing to navigate all of this time?
This will probably be like maybe not the unpopular answer, but I've been used to, for probably the last 8 to 10 years, teaching 5 to 8 group fitness classes a day. So this is probably the least amount that I've worked out in a really long time. And I feel like my body is saying thank you for a little bit of extra rest and recovery. So I've been allowing myself permission to be okay with a smaller workout if I get in 30 minutes. Like, it is that small victory. And also giving myself permission for it to look different than how it has in the past. And also encouraging other people to allow their health and fitness journey to look different. That's been important in our community of our members that used to come to group fitness all of the time. And the idea is that we're staying active, and it's okay if it looks different. And if we come out the other side of this pandemic and you're a little bit heavier than when you started, is that the worst possible thing? Probably not. So I've been trying to find enjoyment with what I do for working out, that it feels good for my brain and my heart and also physically, but it looks really different than how it has in the past. We had a serious 3-on-3 basketball game the other day, and I'm 5'3", so definitely not a baller, but that was a really great workout for me with my kids and my husband to just go play a little basketball on the court and just try something different, because I normally wouldn't consider that my workout for the day.
Sure. And both of you brought this point up previously, and that's the idea of flexibility. Those of us in the fitness community, and I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I plan my workouts just for a long period of time, what I want to accomplish over the 3 months, and then break that down to what I'm doing day to day. Typical periodized program, and that was all taken away from me. But one thing, and that combine that with a couple of martial arts classes every evening, and that's not there anymore. But one thing that's helped me get through this is once in a while, I have a gym in my garage as well, and I've rediscovered my grappling dummy. For those of you who are into jiu-jitsu, it actually looks like the Gimp from Pulp Fiction. I put a little jacket on him, and I practice my martial arts. I practice my martial arts daily, and one of the things that I've been able to do is, like you, I have opportunities to play with my daughter. And I've posted one of our dance videos up, but those little opportunities that we get of kind of random, unstructured movement, again, a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. And you should, if you have those opportunities, whether that's with kids or pets, take that, because that is something that keeps you motivated, keeps you happy and healthy during these times. And we don't know if we'll get back to the regular gym environment anytime soon. So I have 2 more points here. And my third quadrant here is your emotional well-being, your emotional investment. And in this particular quadrant, we wanted to discuss other things that make you happy, and how are you scheduling this into your day. And I'll give you an example. I love to play my guitar. It's very rare that I don't pick it up and play something daily. So what are some of the things that you all are doing for your emotional well-being? I know, Shelley, let's start with you, because you needed a cutoff time. You needed to get in your room when your husband gets back in the house. So what are you doing for your emotional well-being?
I have been leading like 3 nights a week. I do a live streaming meditation, and
Sure.
it's just free and open. And that has been a really great space for me to be in a community setting, to breathe, to lead a guided meditation. That's been really just an awesome experience. But along those lines, I've noticed if I will just check in with myself and ask myself, what do you need in this moment? That's been a really important thing. And sometimes it's, hey, I need a 15-minute power nap, or hey, I need to get outside and get some fresh air. Sometimes I need a hug or that physical touch from someone that I've been quarantined with. But I feel that the check-in is really the key for me with self-care, because it changes so frequently. So that's why I just try to check in with myself. Because if I don't check in with myself, I don't know that anyone else is going to do that.
Okay. And before we move on, we have a question from Mike. And well, welcome, Mike. Thank you for hopping on today. And Mike's a newly certified trainer and wants to know what you recommend to stay sharp in the meantime. I'm assuming that Mike means, what do we do to stay sharp with our skills as trainers, as coaches, because they are definitely perishable if you don't use them. So Wendy, let me have you answer that one.
And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think, when it comes to staying sharp, again, if you look at the OPT model, the thing that really stands out and makes the model very unique is not that it's not structured. It's very open. So any exercise can actually be put into the model and any individual can do it. But what really makes it kind of fit within each phase of training is the acute variables. And so I think it's really just always going back to the basics and going through like phase 1, because again, we're all so used to going to the gym and we have certain goals and we want to lift so much weight and we want to do this, but now's the time, like if you take 20 steps back and you don't have some of those heavy, weights to lift or, bars to throw up and do Olympic lifting, going back to some of the basics on body weight training, doing 4-2-1 push-ups and stuff like that, and kind of owning your own, just really practicing kind of what you preach. I think you're going to see when you go back to the gym personally, you're going to be stronger because you're obviously working on your stabilizers and the muscles that actually help the prime movers, because you're working on full available range of motion and full, looking at the entire muscle action spectrum, if you will. With that being said, on how do I work on my skills on teaching this stuff, I mean, I've got a 4-year-old and right now we're working on teaching him balance training, which is hilarious, by the way, because he is all about like the yoga tree pose and he's like, look at this, and he's trying to hold on to something and he can't make it past like 4 or 5 seconds. We're trying to teach him how to focus and zone in. And so it's actually really fun just trying to see if like certain cues work for different age groups. I'm also kind of blessed because I am married to another NASM master instructor. So, we can kind of keep each other in check a little bit as well. So, whoever you're quarantined with, if you will, whoever's in your household, put them through training sessions, have a family time to go and do something together, like do a family workout and see if the exercises are if they're working where you feel that they struggle, because a lot of times if they're new to exercise, it's either how you're cueing or they don't understand what you're saying. And so a lot of times you can practice on those type of individuals as well. And they're more forgiving too, usually.
Yeah. So. Those are all really good points. And I'll chime in because I do this. Currently, I spend a lot more time in the offices at NASM, but I still train people. And what I do is I write a lot of programs. And that's one thing that you can do to stay sharp. Write a lot of programs, like Wendy is saying, practice what you preach. You have a lot of equipment. If you work in a big box, you have a lot of equipment taken away from you. You have to learn how to be creative. Learn how to, if you're missing one piece of equipment, what can you do now to replace that? Using body weight, using bands to have the same effect. There are lots of options that you can do. You can look at videos on YouTube of a sport that you have no idea about, and think about how you would train those athletes. And then cueing is something that just comes right down to communication. There's no one book of cues that one should follow, but it's about how to use your language and represent it in a way that makes sense to that person to get them to do what they need to do. And those are some of the things, Mike, that you can do right now without ever having to set foot in a gym. And we're running up against the hour. So I wanted to, my last quadrant here and my last point, they're related. And the last quadrant is about connectedness. Like, what are you doing now? How do you, even though we're on top of each other in the house, and that's a good thing, and we're all used to our routine, and there's space that we're used to over the course of the day. What are some of the things that you do to remain connected to your family during these times? And how does that fit into your social support system, your greater social support system? You know, what are you doing to facilitate all those things? Let's start with you, Shelley.
I feel like my husband and I still try to incorporate a date night in the house. You know, it's like, let's go to the living room tonight. Or I think there's something to be said for the planning of it, even if one of us plans a movie that we're going to watch and we were the one that got snacks or something for it. Having somebody else take charge and set it up has still been really fun for us. It's been important for me with my kids to really take time to listen and check in with their emotional stability, and just make sure that they feel like they're being heard, because they're going through a lot as well. And I feel like that's helped my relationship with them individually. And I've also tried to use technology a little bit more. I taught my mom how to use Marco Polo so that she can see her grandkids, or it's not just texting or a phone call, but really allowing that face-to-face. And that's been fun for my kids to ask her questions about her childhood and let her respond. And they get excited about opening up these little video chats that are just for them. And in community-wise, I feel like just that social media connection has been really important for our members and for clients, that they still know that we care about them and that we want to stay connected to them, that we haven't forgotten, and that we're doing everything on our part to keep our little gym family just like that, but it's still connected even though we're apart.
Okay, and Wendy, same question. What are you doing?
I think with my, obviously with my family, we try to take a walk every day together. So, we've got my son, he got a new quad for his birthday. And so he is on his quad. My husband and I are walking the dogs, and it's just really nice to just be outside and kind of look around and enjoy the things without having our phones with us. So I think it's really just taking time away from technology and kind of being out in nature, just kind of being together. I think with our friends, we, tonight we even have a Zoom meeting scheduled so we can have a social happy hour together. And I think, we're trying to do that once or twice a week with different groups of our friends that we can't be with, that, we never even thought about doing until this happened, which, they live in different states. And we're like, we've had this at our fingertips for a really long time. And we've never taken advantage of that. I think also it's really reaching out to family members that we don't usually talk to. I've reached out to aunts and uncles and cousins and try to make it a point to talk to someone and check in on people that I don't usually do that with. And so I'm trying to make it a point. And then, of course, staying connected with my clients. I'm reaching out and staying connected to them at least once or 1 to 2 times a week. Whether it's through text or, phone calls, or, if we need to do a FaceTime or whatever approach we need to take. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
All right. So we are at the top of the hour now, and I wanted to thank both of you for coming on today and sharing your experiences and sharing your expertise with our audience. I hope that everyone who's out there listening today was able to take at least one nugget away of a little piece of information that you can take and implement into your lives right now. That's the only way this stuff works, is if you take it and you start to do it. So before we go, can you give us a couple of, or actually three? Let's do three. Just summarize your thoughts. Give us three things that, the most important things you think our listeners could do right now to navigate these times. Let's start with you, Shelley.
I would say one is to stay present. It can be overwhelming to think about the future. So just stay in this moment. This is where we are. So staying present. Work at finding that balance between structure and flexibility. And then the third one would be to acknowledge and allow all of your emotions to be there when they're there. Just let it come up when it needs to, and then let it go.
Okay, Wendy, and what about you? What are three takeaways you want everyone out there to know before we sign off? Did we lose Wendy?
I'm here.
All right, there you are.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the first thing would be to take advantage of this time to try to better yourself. Again, kind of look within to see maybe areas that you feel like you could grow. Because again, once this gets lifted and we can actually go out into the community and work with our clients again, we're going to have, maybe picked up some new skills. I think that would be something I would say as number one. Number two would be try to, like Shelley said, find balance. Find balance within your work life and your work life balance. And I think the last one would be really just trying to stay positive, because again, this is not a very good situation that many are in, but we've got to really think that we're not sick right now. Some of us are, we're able to communicate with one another. So I think it's really reaching out to people, staying involved, over communicate, and just try to stay connected with as many people as you can.
Excellent. So that is, thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Shelley. That is all of the time that we have for today. Before we sign off, very quickly, tell us how we can get in touch with you on social media. Shelley.
You can find me at Shelley_Dawson on Instagram, and that's with an EY. And that's probably the best place to get a hold of me.
Okay. And Wendy.
So my Instagram is wendy.bats13. You can also find me on Twitter, which is just wendybats13. But then, of course, you can always email me on my NASM email, which is wendy.bats@nasm.org.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to sign off. Thanks again to everyone the panelists and everyone who showed up to listen to us today. You all have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.